Alright, the next washer we have here is a step washer, and on this side, riding up against the bearing in the back of the blade grip, is where the step side is. On the back side, get it back up on the feathering shaft, on the back side of this washer, it's flat, and it rides right up against your shims. So, in my case, I have 4 shims on each side. These are supposedly set up at the factory for flight. I had 4 shims on each side, so I'm making certain that it goes back together that way. Some people have had 2 on one side, 3 on the other. However it comes apart, that's the way you want to put it back together. If you're doing the minor repair, you can use the fly bar trick. That'll help you keep that order. But if you had to disassemble everything and you couldn't do this, you may want to get a paint marker and mark your blade grip. Say put a white mark here and a white mark here. That way you knew these two matched up with each other. That way you knew that side matched up, and you would know, say hypothetically, you had 2 shims on the white side, 3 shims on the non-white side. But we're going to slide those up onto the fly bar and save us the trouble. And then up in here we have a rubber O-ring. In my photo album on helifreak.com, I've got a still photo of new versus old O-rings, and you can see what they look like, wear and tear. This one I think is in pretty good shape, but I believe it's the one on this side, which now at this point with the fly bar here, let me back up a little bit. With the fly bar in place, I can now push the fly bar towards the head, sliding the feathering shaft out the other side of the head. And now still everything, nothing's being dropped or lost. Yeah, this O-ring here, it goes up into the head easily, but it falls back out easily too. So that tells me that O-ring's fairly worn, and I'll have to replace that one. So now we have the feathering shaft or fly bar rod inserted through the head. Everything's still backed up here. If you wanted to be really safe, you could put a piece of tape, just a little piece of electrical tape around your fly bar, and that would keep everything from sliding off the end. I'm not too worried about it here. You've got enough rod. As long as you're careful, you should be safe. Now we have the next blade grip, and here up against that blade grip, I once again have my 4 shims, and I have my step washer. Get those up onto the fly bar rod. And then we're looking at the back end of a bearing in our blade grip, and I'll slide that blade grip forward. This blade grip, same as the other, I've got that washer back behind my one washer. Then I've got my, whoa, now what was I just talking about? Losing stuff? Don't want to have it slide off the other end. Up in here I've got that mystery washer back behind one of these washers with the cup side over here. Then I have my bearing, my brass bearing, brass washer that has all the little ball bearings in it, and it's nicely greased in that cup side again. Then I have another washer here for the thrust bearing, and sliding it forward. The cup side here is again up against that brass bearing or washer. I keep saying the wrong names, but I hope I'm not messing anyone up by doing that. And now I have the feathering shaft, the bolt, and the washer. You unscrew the feathering shaft. This is the bent one you had in the crash. So to get this bolt out the end, just grab it with a pair of pliers or a pair of vice grips. That'll definitely hold it, lock them down. Put your short end in the bolt so you have the long reach for leverage. Break that bolt loose, unscrew it, take your washer. Done with this part of it. You need your new feathering shaft. Take your bolt and the optional apply and Loctite, which I'll show you when I put my final bolt back in. I'm not going to break this joint since I don't need to. But have your washer on your bolt, treat it with thread lock, screw it into the feathering shaft, get it up in there. It doesn't have to be super tight. You're going to tighten down more, but I would just do it in my hand, holding it with your fingers. Just tighten it up. Once it spins, you're fine, because again, you'll be making certain it's tight once you're finished reassembling. Now you can screw your feathering shaft back up on the fly bar. Just enough turns to hold it on there. I turn it enough just so it's not out here flopping around wobbly. Just up there to where it won't bounce around. And I'm going to pull this thrust bearing washer up. My other washers, they're all still in the blade grip. Don't need to worry about them, so I just gently guide my feathering shaft through the opening, pull everything tight. There it is there. Now you want to make certain your O-rings are seated well. For one, when you insert your when your feathering shaft goes through that opening, you don't want your feathering shaft to pinch the O-ring, so just make sure your O-rings are seated well up in the block. I'm going to slide this forward. There's no question about which way your blade grips go, because again, your fly bar rod has kept everything together. Bottom side of the blade grip is shaped for the nut. Top side is round and it's shaped for the bolt, and you always want the bolt going down. Should the nut come off, hopefully gravity is going to hold the bolt in. So we know where that belongs. I'm going to back these metal washers out of the way just until I get this feathering shaft through that O-ring, because I again don't want to pinch and cut into my O-ring. Tight fit. I can pull on the fly bar rod to pull the feathering shaft the rest of the way through the head. So then I just pull that, make sure it's snug. And now you'll either want to put your Allen wrench in there, you can lay it across. I'm typically had been messing with my dental tool, so I'll just stick my dental tool back into the head to keep that bolt from the feathering shaft from pushing back out. I'm going to take my fingernails and just slip up my O-ring onto the feathering shaft. You don't have to be as delicate necessarily as I'm being. I'm trying to make certain you can see everything I do carefully. But again, you don't want to be brutal. So I've got that O-ring seated in there well. I can hold it onto the fly bar rod, slide my spacers and my step washer with the step on this side so it matches my bearing on the back of the fly bar paddle. I'm going to slide my blade grip once I get this fly bar cage back down. Slide that blade grip up on the feathering shaft. Make sure my bolt's all the way through. My thrust bearings and so forth are still in here, all those washers. So now I will need two tools. So I'm going to take the screwdriver, because again, that's just easier to lay something up against that bolt than to stick something in the head. And I'm going to try to make sure all my washers are seated well up inside the blade grip first. Okay. Now comes the part of the Loctite, which you have to be very, very, very careful with. I'm going to set the Heli aside so you can join me down here as we treat this bolt. You don't want to have Loctite on here to where this washer even binds on the bolt. You want that washer to always remain free floating. Loctite, you always want to shake it. But the bottles always make a mess at the top. Maybe I cut it wrong, but they always make a mess. I just take a little pin drill actually and drill a hole, but it always oozes out everywhere. Well, there's enough Loctite there to treat plenty of bolts. So I'm going to take my Allen tool, and that's why these that I got from the hobby shop are great. Any brand, but these are definitely durable. I'm going to slip that bolt up on the end of my Allen tool, and then just the very tip of the bolt, I'm going to touch this Loctite on the nozzle. And we'll pause for a YouTube break and be right back with you.